What's up, guys? Welcome to the HYL Summer Classic Post Show. My name is Salman Ali at Salman Ali NBA on Twitter. I'm here joined again by Ali Khan Bijani at Rockets_Insider on Twitter. Again, we're not here to talk about the NBA or the Rockets. We're here to talk about HYL. If you're joining us on YouTube, be sure to give us a thumbs up and share it with anyone you knew who came to the tournament. And before we get into it, I really want to say this. Thank you. Thank you to everyone who had a role to play in the success of this tournament. Obviously, I think my dad did a great job, but he had a lot of help. And frankly, he doesn't want me to spend a lot of time gassing him up, so I won't do that. I've been to a lot of these tournaments since I was a kid, and something of this scale is really a all hands on deck operation. In the end, I think we had 500 athletes and spectators combined, something like that, in 37 teams. The fact that it went as smoothly as it did is really a testament to the amount of commitment we got from everyone. If you were an athlete, an organizer, a coach, a parent, a sponsor, a volunteer, you made this tournament possible. You did. Remember, these guys weren't paid. I don't care if you were a doctor working the medical desk, if you were a parent who flew in for the tournament, just supportive, showing up to the games, if you were working the scoreboard, or even if you were handing out food. You all made this happen. I hope you can reflect back on this weekend and take some personal pride in it.
Absolutely. And what the greatest part was, Salman, is that there was so much gratitude even before this podcast, right? During the actual tournament, you saw people saying thank you. You saw people smiling, having a good time. We talked about how this was an event that was going to bring people together, and it actually did that. It brought together two countries of Ismailis together to be able to play the game we all love and to be able to just have a good time together and build some camaraderie and relationships. I thought it was a massive success.
Yeah, by the way, my dad had this meeting before the tournament, right, where he talked about the goals for it, right? Which is his main goal was make a friend, network, right? Come back here in a few years with different people that you came in with this time.
Absolutely.
That's an admirable goal. I'd have a second one. Let's get into Smiley in the NBA before I die. I'm 28 years old. I'm serious. I'm dead serious. I'm 28 years old. My grandfather lived till 85. I think I got about 60 years on this planet. You can't tell me by the time I'm dead, we can't get into Smiley in the NBA. Events like this are how we do it. Right? By prioritizing youth sports at an early point, you can get people really interested and really imagining careers outside of your traditional doctor, lawyer, engineer, all that stuff. You do it early, right? You do it early. You and I get people coming up to us all the time asking us about how do we break into X industry, right? The sports industry, right? Well, that's great. I'd love more people to work in the media side. I want a freaking player. I want someone on the sidelines coaching. I want someone in the front office. That's what I want, right? I think we might actually get the front office side sooner than we think. But what I'm trying to say here is that yes, I love that this brings people together. I also want to let's start building planting the seeds for this, right?
Absolutely.
Before I die.
Well, Salman, you're inshallah going to live a long life, and so we will definitely see that. One thing I want to highlight, you mentioned about the youngsters, these 6 to 9 year olds, these 10 to 12-year-olds, the greatness in their coaching. Coaches, you can tell, have put in a lot of work in teaching them the fundamentals of how to play, teaching them the basic foundations, the skills and qualities you need to have to be a successful player. And we saw that translate, in their plays. A lot of these teams were well coached. And the fact that some of these teams had not practiced together but still found success because of the fundamentals, that was great to see. And I think that's where it happens, right? Salman, is where these coaches can instill these positive, good habits in these young players. Over time, these teams will play against each other, right? We talked about some of these young up and coming teams on the last podcast. They showed up, and who's to say in about 5 years from now, one of the youngest teams from the 16 plus can play one of the teams from the 13-15 division in a USIG final, right? Or a
Right.
game final. I think that time is coming. I think that also time will come too where there will be a player who can, inshallah, go into a professional career. I mean, we had a few players present at HYL who play collegiately or who have played
Right.
collegiately.
Yeah.
That step is coming where it's going to go to that professional level.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it comes in baby steps, right? Like we have a lot of D2 athletes. Let's get some D1s. Let's get some D1 starters. Let's get somebody in the G League. Hell, play for Turkey, right? Let's get these baby steps going in, right? Excuse the coughing, by the way. I'm battling COVID. We were supposed to record this show like a couple of days now. We just kind of been delaying it for one reason or another. Yesterday we delayed it because I had COVID. I'm sorry. It took a long time to get out, but we're battling through it. We're gonna get it done today. Let's get into it. Enough complaining. 16 plus. We'll talk about the winners in a little bit, but first I want to talk about a couple teams, starting with California Dream, the LA team. I said last week I thought they had the most pressure coming into this tournament because they won last time and no one really saw it coming. And I know people are going to look at how they got bounced in round one and assume we're going to hit on them, or that somehow this kind of like invalidates what they did last year. No, like that's not what I'm going to do. They didn't just win at nationals last year; they kicked everyone. You don't get to take that away from them. I have a lot of respect for these guys. I think they're going to be a player moving forward. They're not a dynasty. They didn't win twice, right? And they're not going to be the favorites to win next nationals, frankly, right? But they played hard, man, and they lost to the eventual champs. I don't think there's any shame in that. I think they had the element of surprise working for them the last tournament. Nobody really knew who they were. They didn't have it this time, but I still think they were respectable. I do think they have to make some tweaks to their roster before they go to internationals. They didn't have, excuse me, they don't have the best complementary talent right now. I think they need more scoring options, particularly on the perimeter. They're a little front court heavy. Ideally, that comes in the form of someone who can really shoot the basketball, but I think that's a weakness. That's a weakness for them. Some guys may get better too. And there's always the possibility that they add guys on this roster, but I think they have a solid foundation. They have some real players. In particular, I thought Adil Lalji and Gibran Sawani played great in that final game. They got to the free throw line a ton. Here's the thing, man. I don't think they expected everyone to kind of have their number this time, right? We'll see if they're ready for it next time. I don't have a problem with how they went out, though. I really don't. They didn't quit. They didn't choke. They got beat by a better team, right? It happens. They'll grow from this, and they'll be back, Alikhan. I think I've seen a lot of teams lose, in these tournaments, right? It stinks. It's gonna be with them for a while, right? They're probably still licking their wounds. It's gonna be a couple weeks, right? But the best teams learn, right? And they come back better. And I think that's what's going to happen with them.
I mean, they were missing their leader, who was a big part of their championship team, and I think for me, when it comes to California Dreamin', you gotta add players, not just like in terms of shooting or overall. You gotta have a solid 9-man rotation. You have to have players who can come off the bench and keep that same level of intensity. You mentioned Gibran. I think Gibran, and we had talked about this on the last podcast, who's the best basketball player, who's a Smiley. I think Gibran has the case to be the best basketball player, who's Smiley. Clearly was one of the best players on the team last time. Clearly one of the best players on the team this time.
Yeah.
And when he went to the bench, you saw an immediate drop off in paint touches, or not, I mean, just touching the paint and being able to kick out and and move the basketball, being able to rebound the basketball, being able to kind of do a lot of the things that California Dreamin' does well. So you have to have a solid 9-man rotation that can make up for when Gibran needs to take a breather on the bench. Because as good as he is, you cannot expect to play even your best guy all 40 minutes.
And I don't know the interpersonal dynamics of that team. I don't know how many of these guys are friends and what kind of went into the making of this team. They're gonna have to have some tough conversations, right? I think if there is more talent out there in LA, you got to add that to this team, and you got to, I mean, maybe if not kick someone out, reduce their role in the rotation.
One thing I had heard was after their loss early in the playoffs, they had a team meeting where they had conversations about, hey, what are our next steps? What needs to happen? And that's a sign of good leadership, brother. You mentioned it's going to sting for them for a bit. I think it's a sign of good leadership. Hey, this was a good test for us going into Dubai and what we need to do to be successful at an international scale. I think this will really help them kind of set that up for what are they missing from a personnel perspective. I think shooting is a great point. I just think having another ball handler who
Well,
can,
that's yeah. They need someone with some real shake on the perimeter.
yeah, exactly. And,
Yeah.
and I think once they do that, that just takes them to a whole new level. And obviously, like I said, they have to have a 9-man rotation, a solid 9-man rotation where there's not a drop off when they go to the bench. I think case in point, and a lot of teams made note of that, was Clutch City, the eventual champions. They were deep in their bench and they were able to rotate multiple guys at once. To be able to take breathers, to be able to play plug and play. They were able to play the same defensive style they wanted to. And I think that went noticed by a lot of the teams that were present there. Hey, if we're going to compete in these tournaments, we have to have solid depth. It can't just be a starter heavy lineup. We have to have good bench guys to come off the bench.
It's gotta be well rounded too, right? It can't just be all front court, right? Which is what I kind of that's my impression of this California team. It's very front court heavy. You need some real guards. All right, now let's talk about the Dallas Titans, who lost in a competitive semifinals to Clutch City. I'm sorry, I'm fighting this cough. Every other word, I feel it coming. So I was reminded this weekend that this wasn't the same team they had at Nationals last year.
Only four Titans
Well,
return.
right. And this was before the tournament started. It wasn't like an excuse given to me after they lost. It was before the tournament. Shout out to Danish Pradam. Some guys didn't want to play. Some guys went to different teams. With that said, listen, nobody wants to hear that crap, man. Nobody wants to hear it. I know it wasn't used as an excuse, but it sure sounds whiny. It sure sounds whiny. You still brought a team to the tournament. It's still called the Dallas Titans, right? Some of these players were on that last Dallas team. In some respects, you made some upgrades, right? You were competitive in the semis. You had a real chance to win the whole thing. When you lose, you lose. That goes on your record. I don't care if your roster wasn't as good as it should have been. We didn't give Houston that excuse, for last year's choke job. We still chewed them out last week. They also still had a lot of their main guys there. The biggest advantage they've had over all these teams is their size. They're a huge team, and they still had that. They had Wajid Dawood back, and they had Matt Kingsley, who's actually an upgrade over Raheem, who left, right? They may have had a talent disadvantage, but that's not the main reason they lost this game. And on that talent disadvantage, it's true. Listen, they lost some guys. They had Asad Magani, who was their best player. They lost him. They lost Shazo. They lost Sahil. And, they lost Raheem. But again, I think they upgraded over Raheem. But here's the kicker. I did some reporting. Some capital J journalism, Ali Khan, for the show. So sources tell me that Danish Pradam, the coach of the Titans, told multiple people the following last year, and I quote, the best player in Dallas is Matt Kingsley. The most clutch player is Mustafa Ali. If they both ever came to the Titans, it'd be over. No question. That's a direct quote, Ali Khan. I confirmed that with multiple sources, and guess who they added to the roster this summer? Matt Kingsley and Mustafa Ali. So we're not going to go easy on Dallas. Nobody has talked more over the years than Danish Pradam. So he's going to get this, right? Like, I'm sorry. We're going to treat these guys as equally as we treat these other teams.
You know what's interesting? And I'm gonna shout out my boy Danish because he helped me with some research. He gave me a list of the past tournament results. And I don't
no. Listen. He didn't just give it to you. He gives that list to everyone. He gives that list. He makes sure that is painted. That's etched in stone somewhere in his house. The list of titles he's got there. That he's got a banner for every little HYL / AKYSB tournament he's won.
Why is this giving me Dallas Cowboys vibes right now?
Listen. You know what? You want to know why they lost this game, Ali Khan?
Why?
It's because they were out of shape. Clutch City a younger team that only practiced once before this
Wow.
tournament, ran them out of the gym. They ran them out of the gym. During that game, I was sitting next to this kid who's trying to break into our industry, right? I'm bad with names, so please forgive me. But I turned to him midway through that second half and said, these guys are gassed. Look at their faces, right? They were working, they were walking the ball down the court. Their heads were hanging low, and they were huffing and puffing. 10 seconds after I said that, Donish called a timeout. I turned to that kid and said, watch the bench. What happens on the bench is Houston standing up around Rolo for their huddle, and the Titans are all on their chairs chugging water, while Donish is standing up in front of them with his clipboard. They were gassed. They were gassed. You could see it on their faces. Clutch City, to their credit, took every opportunity to use their speed advantage to get in transition. And the Titans missed a lot of easy stuff around the basket. Some of it was just like easy bunnies, goes in and out of the rim, but some of it was just tired legs. That's the main reason they lost this game. Is Clutch City more talented than them? Sure, I would say so. But Dallas is a more experienced team. They're a bigger team. And Donish has coached in a lot more high-pressured environments than Rolo. And they had enough talent to win this game. They had enough talent to get a lead, right? They
had a lead.
But they made mistakes. They kept going to Matt in the post all game. They never adjusted. And Matt
Shout out to Abed, by the way. Shout out to Abed. He
Well,
did a wonderful job.
right.
Yeah.
Matt got bodied by these 6'0" brown dudes, right? And they didn't lose that game because of talent. They lost that game because they made some strategic mistakes and they were gassed. And my question is this: has time passed this Dallas team by? Because that's what everyone's coming out of this tournament asking. You heard it, I heard it, right? This is the second straight Nationals they lost. They didn't even make it to the finals this time. That's unlike them. This new generation's faster than them. They're more athletic than them. And in a lot of respect, let's be honest, they're more skilled. Can this team win at the highest levels without Asad Megani? Is Donish just like the Bill Belichick of Ismaili basketball? Can he win without Brady? Right? Listen, there's no shame in it. They've had a great run. I'm not necessarily saying it's over. I'm just asking questions.
I look, man. The last time Dallas won anything was 2019. It's 2024. And I think it's a realistic question to ask. Has Father Time finally caught up with the Dallas Titans?
I want to go ahead.
I do want to say, though, I do want to say there is a lot of good young talent in Dallas. And this time they kind of, like you said, they split up. There were different teams. Rare Territory had some of the players from the former Titans team on that team. And Rare Territory, the reason why they didn't go on is because they just had chemistry issues and they couldn't figure out the rotation.
Oh, we're gonna talk about Rare Territory in a second, but like with Dallas, like here's the thing: you put the name Titans on the logo, whatever, on the jersey. That's it. That's the Titans, right? You had enough time to figure out who you wanted on this team, right? You could have convinced as much as you could have. Nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to hear it. I don't want to hear it again. Like I heard it was one time before the tournament. That's it. That's all I'm going to hear of it, right? We gave them you lost some guys. Yeah. But guess what? Houston didn't bring their best guys last time. We didn't care. We shit on them. Right? This time, it was up to you to construct the best possible team. And not only was it up to you to construct the best possible team, it was up to you to make sure they came in here in shape. And you didn't do either of them. You had a shitty game plan to give the ball to Matt over and over and over again, and he got bodied by 6'0" brown dudes. Right?
Yeah.
That's on you. That's not talent. That's on you.
I do want to make a note. Like, I thought that was really cool. Shams Charania, who is a friend of both of ours, colleague of ours, Shams actually played in this tournament. I think this was his Ismaili basketball debut on the Dallas Titans. He is somebody who's known to be a shooter, and he came off the bench and provided some spark shooting and was a good culture fit for them, according to multiple players. I think that was great that Shams had a chance to be able to join their team and
It's pretty good. I mean,
So
unfortunately,
just
he
the
missed
fact, like,
he missed out on the Tyus Jones signing because he was in the game,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
he couldn't break those like that. It was pretty cool. I'm not, like he was a little bit of a celebrity there that weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then, we mentioned like all the changes happening with Dallas. This was also the first tournament that Salman Alani was the new captain of the Titans. And so as they're going through this change, new captain now, what is next for them, Salman? You mentioned kind of like Father Time potentially passing them by. There's talent in Dallas. I really do think so. There's talent in Dallas, and we've seen it not just at HYL, not just at USIG, but in their leagues also in Dallas. There's clearly talent there. What do they need to do to get back on top, Salman?
I want to talk about the Houston side of things before we get back to that, because I don't want to just
Okay.
say Dallas like threw this away, right? I'm so freaking proud of this team.
Yeah,
We gave them a hard time last week, didn't we? Right?
we
And
did. We did
I
give them a hard time.
and I had a feeling that they were going to win this tournament. I told you that in private on day one. I didn't want to tell them, but you could just tell, right? They were down
We had that conversation. You're like, I don't want that to get in their ego. That hey, if I tell them now, they're gonna be like,
yeah,
oh yeah, we got this. We know.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to tell them that, right? But they got down by 7 points against Dallas. My mom was sitting next to me, right? And she asked me, "Who do you think's going to win this game?" I was like, "Shotton's going to win." Right? And the reason I said that is because when you looked at Houston's body language, they weren't scared. They weren't demoralized. Their shoulders weren't slumped like they were last year. They looked determined, Alikhan. They looked unfazed,
They were
unperturbed,
engaged.
unburdened. Their offense was stagnant, and they just kept attacking the rim. They showed a lot of grit. I think Rolo deserves a lot of credit. We asked last week, is Rolo ready for the big leagues? He certainly looked ready. He certainly looked ready.
He is ready.
This was his first national tournament at the helm, and this dude delivered in the biggest possible way. Credit to him. They never got down on themselves. They were physical defensively, and particularly that front line of Abid, Cheyenne, and Shazim were excellent. They're not as tall as Wajid and Matt, but they played big. They used their strength. They used their athleticism. They were as vertical as they could be. Shazim didn't have the best scoring game in this one, but he also never has his legs against Dallas because he's forced to defend these big dudes, right?
Yep. How much they switched on the perimeter, he has to battle a lot, and that takes away from your legs whenever you're shooting the basketball.
Yeah, and I thought he was awesome on defense and rebounding the ball. He also hit that and 1-3 that may have been the dagger to the game, right?
Big time, big time shot.
And I know he's my brother.
I honestly, I think that was the loudest I heard at the gym that weekend.
Yeah.
That and 3.
Yeah, and I know he's my brother, but I don't compliment him as much as I should. He was so important to them. I saw that he tried to take himself out of the game at the end because he was so tired, but Rolo put him right back in. I thought that was funny. I thought Ishan and Shanif played really well. Ishan is such a measured player, doesn't really get too high or too low. I thought he had a pretty important layup when they were struggling a little bit offensively. And because he's so small and Houston has all these other options, everyone kind of underestimates him. Like every once in a while he'll score and you're just like, oh yeah, they have that guy too. Right? But yeah, super proud of this team. All around, great team effort. There's no reason they can't win 2 or 3 or more of these at minimum if they stick together. I don't want to hear this talk about this might be my last one. I talked to some of these guys after the game, like they were having that dialogue. Shut up. You guys are all in your mid-20s. This team is awesome. Like you're gonna get married. You're gonna get out of shape. All that crap's gonna come at you so fast, and you're gonna miss the best years of your life playing basketball. Stop with this ego crap of this might be my last one. Stop it. It doesn't make you look cool, right? It's a crime to stop this train.
I do want to give us a couple of special shout outs to players from those teams, from that team who I thought deserve some credit for how they played. Cheyenne Karawadia, this was his big time debut with this team. He played heavy minutes, and I thought he was phenomenal. He has an outside shot. He has a nice little step back that he can go to, but he is such a big body that he can crash the glass on the offensive side. He gets rebounds. He pushes the pace in transition. I like him a lot. I thought Sahil Venkani gave some good minutes off the bench as a big, as well as Zane Momin. They were great. Amar Bojani, we've known him. He was a kid.
Let's talk about this Amar for a second, because Amar is he's such a tricky player, right? You never know if it's the right call to add him to a team. Amar knows what I'm talking about. I know him well enough to talk about him like this, right? Like everyone knows that it's kind of like Is it worth it? Right? Is it worth it to do this? Right? It's not that Amar the talent isn't worth it. It's Amar the hothead, right? And in this game, in this tournament rather, you just got just enough of Amar, right? Not too much, not too little, right? He was just enough to give those guards rest, right? To give Shanif some rest, give Ishan some rest, and he's played quality minutes. I loved Amar in this tournament. This is the best version of Amar, right?
Well,
when he's playing for Rolo, that's
yeah.
the best version of Amar.
Well, because Rolo did a great job putting him in situations where he can be successful. There were lineups where Rolo put him in as the primary scoring option, and he put him surrounding other big guys to kind of battle and allow Amar to be able to run in transition and take the pull-up shot if he wanted to. And there were a couple of games where he had a couple pull-up threes early in the first half, and I thought that was only possible because he was put in that position to be successful by Rolo. I do want to also give a shout out to Alicia Momin, who
great vet for this team.
Is he Taj Gibson?
Yeah, I mean, he really is like the hustle guy for this team, and like he just he's part of the reason they never got too low.
Yeah.
Right? Like he's part of the reason they never hung their heads low. He wasn't play he couldn't play last time. He was hurt.
Yep.
Right? This time he was playing, and there's a difference between having a guy on the sidelines kind of being a second coach for you versus having him be on the bench, right? And lifting the guys up on the court, right? By the way, on the last show, we talked about how I wanted to know who the best player in Ismaili basketball was for this generation. You kind of touched upon the subject, right? Who's the Neil Merchant for this generation? Who's that guy that will give you a chance to win this entire thing? I think I got some clarity on this. To me,
okay.
it's either Zayn McNogia, aka Damo. I don't know why the hell they call him, why he didn't just go with Zayn, whatever. Or Zuo Sakiani, when he's in shape. Right?
You told me Zul during multiple occasions during the weekend, and
Right.
I want to explain to the audience why you think Zul's up there.
Well, so you could go either way, I think, right? Damo has such a complete game. He can shoot, he can pass, and he's extremely quick. Even after the ACL tear, no one can really stay in front of him, and he stays very calm, which I think was really valuable to him. It's particularly against Dallas. He kept their dribble penetration alive when things got stagnant. He kept being aggressive. The patience goes a long way in the clutch. And Zul too. Zul is so important in everything that they do, right? He's a great shooter. Might be the best shooter on Clutch City. It's either him or Shanif. Extremely confident pulling up. Like, extreme confidence, right? He's developed this aggressive driving game over the last 5 years. He always gets to the free throw line. And just like Zayn, he stays calm. Rolo never wants to take Zul out of the game. And I totally get it. I wouldn't either. And what's wild is he plays this well, and he's like 20 pounds overweight. Like, he's got a belly. He's got a bit. Like, I told him this already, so I don't feel guilty. Can you imagine this dude scores 30 on you, and you go upstairs to get food before your next game, and he's, like, scarfing down hot and spices? Like, that's demoralizing, Ali Khan. Like, I'd quit basketball. If I saw that image. Like, if you could rely on him to stay in shape, he's easily the best player in Ismaili basketball. Easily. But obviously he had the ankle injury, and he came in a little doughy, right? But he was still great, and you just got just enough to win this thing. Right now, I think I'd say Damo by a hair, right? When Zul was not in shape, I'd say Damo by a hair, and he was the most important player for them in that Dallas game, and I think the Dallas game was really the finals, right?
Okay.
But again, you could go either way with this, and I wouldn't blame you. There's some other guys, right? That you could say best player in Ismaili basketball. I think the best player in Ismaili basketball is in Houston. I'm biased. I think it's one of these two guys.
Okay. I have a few names that were mentioned to me over the weekend, and you know, the eye test kind of matches up with it. Like, you say, oh, you know, this player's really good. Zion Siani from ATL. I heard a lot of really good things about him.
Well, so he scored 35 points and a half this weekend. Like, he was like the reason we should have mentioned him last week, but we didn't know he was going to be playing. He got added last minute to Atlanta, right?
He's good.
35 points and a half against Dallas.
He's really good, man.
The team scored 38 points. He scored 35. Right? He's really, and most of it was like one-on-one stuff. Just ISO.
He's so balanced. That's what I like about his game. He can score from the perimeter. and he can score off the ball or on the ball. He can score in the mid range, and when he pulls up, he can shoot over range too. He can shoot over length, and then he's able to finish so well around the rim. He has a complete 3 level game, and that game against the where he scored 35 points in that half, that was a clinic. They tried multiple different defensive combinations on him. They couldn't stop him. That was as good of a half as like even other coaches were like, man, like they were scouting the game. They were so impressed by him. That was as good as a half as you will see in an Somali basketball tournament.
Yeah. I mean,
So
the reason like I'm not considering him, it's like, I mean, come on, you got to at least make the Final Four. Right.
of the
Yeah.
team wise, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
We should have had him on the list last week. I think it's a fair correction.
Yeah. Two more players that you didn't mention. I just want to mention real quick. Gibran for California Dream. I think Gibran.
Oh, well, we talked about him last week.
Yeah, and I'm just mentioning him again. Gibran. I think he's still, to me, is one of the best players in Somali basketball.
Most disappointing team for me, you got to go with Rare Territory. It's that Chicago Dallas team. Look, they won the winter HYL tournament. It's the same team. They added a pretty good center in Raymond. They shit the bed. They shit the bed. Nobody expected them to lose to Houston, who we'll talk about in a minute. I don't really have much to say, to be honest. I'm just really disappointed. I expected more.
So when I asked some people from Dallas about what happened with Rare Territory, did not get the Chicago perspective. When I asked from a Dallas perspective, the answer was just the team had chemistry issues. A lot of players who play similar styles, and then just couldn't get their rotations right. I don't know how much that is true or not. I will tell you though that they are very talented, and when you talk about talent, right? Like you talked earlier about how talented Clutch City was, how talented Titans were, how talented California Dreaming is. Rare Territory should be in that top 4 conversation.
We had them there.
And
right?
yeah, we talked about it. They have as much talent as anybody.
Yeah.
Clearly,
I mean, they made the top 4. It's just they should have their matchup indicated they should have made the finals.
something must have happened. Is chemistry? Is it rotations? I don't know what it is, but there is no reason why. And you picked them too to go all the way as well, at least in the finals. There's no reason why they didn't get there.
Well, I mean, like I think I ended up having like California Dream and
Clutch City?
and the Titans.
Titans. Okay.
Yeah, because I remember going into the weekend, I didn't have faith. I watched Clutch City day 1. I'm like, okay, I see it. But yeah, I mean, once I saw how the tournament was playing out, I'm like, okay, the bracket's like this. It's gonna be Rare Territory, and it's gonna be Clutch City because I thought Clutch City was gonna win. But I mean, it's not like it wasn't a close game. It was nip and tuck for that entire first half. That second half, the All-Stars just run away with it. And let's talk about the All-Stars because I'm getting a little bit of a headache talking about Rare Territory. Again, much like Clutch City, really freaking proud of this team. They weren't supposed to go as far as they did. It was kind of a ragtag bunch. You had Zane Moradia, Akil, Raymond Beaver. I think these guys kind of put together a team last minute. It was kind of wild that they made the finals. These are like all tail end of their prime guys. I love these guys, but I mean, they would even acknowledge that. Akil and Zane both have babies, right?
Yeah.
I thought Beaver played awesome in that final game. Honestly, I don't really have much to say about these guys other than hats off. Hats off. Nobody expected you guys to make the finals. And it's not like when they got there, they got rolled over. It was competitive. It was a good finals. The better team won, but honestly, if they had like Naveed Jawani, who was injured, they could have easily won this thing. They could have. Like that's a. I kind of feel guilty we didn't talk about this team more before the tournament. It was just the ragtag nature of the group, right? That prevented me from picking them. Akil had a great tournament, yes, right? The reason I often don't mention him in like that top echelon, right? It's just like I think there are guys that are just better than him off the dribble, It's not that Akil isn't fine off the dribble. It's just I think there are guys that are better than him off the dribble,
Okay.
right? He's the best shooter in Ismaili basketball perhaps ever, right? Navid Guruji has maybe a case. I'm not sure if people listening who know who Navid did. Navid play in 35 plus? Whatever the case. Yeah. Like that's the only guy who has a case to like all time Ismaili shooter. Like it's Akil or it's Navid.
Couple shout outs to guys on that team, young guys. You mentioned telling their careers, but young guys who stepped up, played key roles for them. Ayan Sunesra, he was good, man. He ran in transition, he rebounded, hit some free throws, knocked down some corner threes. He's the kind of role player you want when you surround yourself with great attacking guards like Zane and Akil. So that was one. And then Arez McNoji, who I was very impressed with, young man as well. So they had a good fusion. You mentioned tail end of their career guys, but they had a good fusion. And those young players who stepped up and played and starred in their roles were a big reason why they went undefeated in the regular season, and then in the playoffs went all the way through. And honestly, could have still won. It was close until halfway through that second half.
Micro criticism. Why did Ursulan play? So listen, they have a good team, right? They played their best guys the most, but they needed some off the dribble juice. You can't tell me that Ursulan couldn't have used some minutes from him. You can't tell me that.
At least for his shooting, especially in that last game when you were struggling to knock down some shots or break the switching style that Clud said he wanted to do. There were definitely moments where I feel like Ursulan should have definitely played.
I think he got little guide. And what I mean by little guide is he's the younger guy on the team, and they've never viewed him as that guy, right? Like I think it's just the reality of like these teams that are put together like this, right? When you have someone that with that much of an age difference from your top guys, they it's just hard the connection, right? I don't know why he didn't play, right? You know how you didn't Amish wasn't playing,
well he was injured,
right? But I'm saying Amish wasn't playing, so you couldn't have played Ursulan to make up for some of that off the dribble juice. You're
Absolutely.
like that's like I don't get it, right?
No, fair.
Yeah, but I mean like that's just a micro criticism. Overall, hats off. Again, they should not have been in this position. They put themselves in this position. They basically it's kind of a statement thing like, hey, we're not going anywhere. We're still here. Right?
Yeah. My just I know we talked about North All Stars and Red Territory. My favorite moment the entire weekend. My favorite moment. I went on Instagram Live for this. I was running the Instagram for HYL, so I went on Instagram Live for this game. Kept asking Rolo, "Hey, Rolo, it's close. Should I just go live? Should I go live?" He's like, "Yeah, just do it now." When Jermaine from YYZ Hoopers stole the ball and hit a game-winning layup, when DNA, so this team from Memphis, great game. I mean, they were shooting the ball lights out. They had a lead going into the last 2 minutes. And then YYZ came back, hit some threes, hit some free throws, got back into it, and it was tied. And they had the final shot. And Jermaine just pickpockets the ball, takes it all the way for the layup, injures his groin, by the way, while doing so. But the grizzled vet Jermaine gets the score and gets YYZ into the semifinals. That was my favorite moment of the entire weekend. The way pretty much all of Canada that was there rushed and surrounded him. Everybody kind of helping him up and taking him to the side where he can kind of be worked on. I mean, you can't tell me there was a better moment than that. That was just so much fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, another team I want to shout out, and it went exactly as I told you it was going to be. ISO Elite, right? Like I told you they were going to surprise some people at this tournament, and that's exactly what happened. Like they're not a joke, man. They're gonna be back. They're gonna be right there. They're gonna be right there. They might be the team. Listen, if Dallas is waving the white flag, ISO Elite they might be there. That we might have 3 Houston teams in the semis next time.
I mean, Keon. Those boys, man, they are very good at attacking in transition. They can shoot lights out. Cheyenne is a great big. They have a couple good bigs down there as well in that team. I'm just very proud of how they played. And there was not one coach from the other 16 plus teams who did not watch their game or coach against them who said, these guys don't got next. They have next. And to a point where when we talk about them later on, there's a California team in that 13 and 15 division who has next also in that 16 plus division soon. And it would not surprise me if we're talking here 5 years from now, Salman, in 2029, and we have an ISO Elite versus that 13-15 California team final. Because those two teams, the way they're playing and how skilled those young kids are, they definitely got next, man. And you know, shout out to I mentioned them earlier with Jermaine, but shout out to YYZ. They have a couple young guys as well. I think they're going to be back. They have a couple high school kids, young college kids, a couple players who have played in Canadian national teams. I mean, they have some really good talent, and you can see that in their play. And I think they will also be a force to be reckoned with going into the future as well. So we're talking about Dallas and Houston and California in terms of the current teams. There's teams knocking on the door right now in future tournaments across North America from a Canadian side and also here from a U.S. side who are going to be challenging some of our old folks or current mid-20s guys on who got next.